Hey, what's up, everyone? Mr. D'Souza here for our first distance learning lesson. So we're going to actually start a brand new unit. It's just going to be a lot easier. We're going to get back to coordinate geometry when we get back to school, I hope. Really hope. Yeah, we're going to start something brand new. I think it's going to be great for this type of learning because it's a lot of definitions, it's a lot of practice. There's hardly any graphing. So I think it's going to be great. So this first lesson, the aim is going to be what are different parts of circles. So this is going to be more of a chill lesson, nothing too crazy. We're really just going to talk about parts of circles so that when we get into the bigger stuff tomorrow, you kind of have the terminology down. So a couple examples. Pizza is a circle. I'm going to be talking about pizzas today. Sprinkler systems. So the profile of a sprinkler kind of has this like angle-ish type kind of thing. But if you look as a top-down view of the sprinkler, it also is like circular. We're going to talk about that, I think, in 2 days. Similar with this picture, it's a bridge. But with the reflection, it does look like a circle. And we're going to talk today about how parts of circles are called arcs. And that's actually one of the big things that we're going to focus on in this unit. So I'm going to put myself down here and we're going to get to it. So our learning objective for today is that we will be able to identify parts of circles. Now, again, we were going to talk about central and inscribed angles. That's going to be tomorrow. And then the measure of arcs with respect to central and inscribed angles are also going to be tomorrow. Mainly because I want you to feel comfortable, get used to this kind of style of taking notes, so on and so forth. Homework number 1 is going to be kind of simple. All we want you to do is upload your notes to your respective classrooms, whether if I'm your teacher or it's Ms. Fu or Ms. James, whoever, you have to upload it to your teacher's Google Classroom. Unfortunately, as you can tell, there's no graphic organizer. So you're going to have to take your own notes and you're going to have to learn how to take notes, which is actually great. So let's jump to it. So first things first, what's a circle? So there's an actual rigorous definition. A circle is the set of all points equidistant from one point. So really what that means is, is if I draw a dot, let's call that C, as that's my center. Let's say I measure, let's pretend this is like an inch, and I put a dot. Let's say I measure another inch, and I put a dot. And I keep kind of doing this infinitely, all in every direction I can. You'll notice that it's starting to create what we know as a circle. So actually, let's do this in a different color so it's a little bit more obvious. Bam. So if I stretch that out, see, it wasn't perfect. We're not perfect. But you can kind of see that all of these points that I tried to make, except for this one, I don't know what happened to that one. Actually, I do know what happened. Hold on. There you go. Close enough. I didn't have my center properly. That all these points that I was creating are the same distance away from the center. And if you do that an infinite amount of times, it creates a circle. Okay. Now we're going to go into, well, what are the different parts of a circle? So specifically, this is what you should copy down. These are the things that you have to know, because once we start getting into like the heavier stuff, I'm going to be using these words as if you've known them for years. All right. So first things first, what is a circle? That's what we got already. Radius. A radius is a line segment between the center and a point that's on the circle. So I'm going to make this a little bit easier for all of us. And I'm going to label my circle. Now, typically, the center of a circle we label as C, or we label it as the letter O. That's just standard. C for center, O because it looks like a circle. And then I'm just going to name these randomly. Doesn't really matter. Okay. So for example, a radius is a line segment from the center to a point that's on the circle. So there's actually a couple of radii. So from the center to the circle, for example, this blue line, CE, is an example. C to A, so C to A is also an example. And C to D is also an example. Okay. It's kind of like going from the center to the edge. It's kind of like half the distance instead of going through the whole thing. We'll talk about that in a second. The next thing is a chord. Now, this is actually probably one of the words that you might have forgotten. A chord is a line segment in the interior of the circle with the endpoint on the circle, or rather the endpoints on the circle. So let's see. This line CB, so CB, is considered a chord because it's a line segment and the endpoints are on the circle. And what we mean by on the circle is it's on that red line, or rather that red curve. And we're going to talk about what that means in a little bit. There's also another chord, technically line segment AD, technically is a line segment, and the endpoints are on the circle. However, you might have recognized that that is a special line that we call the diameter. A diameter is a chord that passes through the center. Okay. So something else I want to make note of is that the radius, or actually let's look at AC. The radius is like half of the diameter. So sometimes you've seen stuff like this, that the diameter, right, is the same thing as doubling the radius, right? So if this is my diameter, the whole thing, dA, if I cut it in half, that's a radius. Or if I take a radius like AC and I double its length, that's also the diameter. That's a common equation that you've most definitely seen. If not, now you know. All right, so let's talk about some other things that you might have seen before. Circumference. I have a funny story about that, but give me a second. So circumference, if you remember, is the distance around the outside of the circle. So for example, this red outline is considered the circumference. It's the distance around the outside of the circle. Think of it this way. If you remember what perimeter is when you add up like all the sides of like a shape. Perimeter is the same thing as actually circumference, but for circles. So it's literally like the total length of like the outside of the circle. Funny story, my cat, which is right over here, his name is Riley. Spoiler alert, I was supposed to name him Circumference, but apparently that didn't work out. But anywho, that's a great extra credit question. My cat's name is Riley. He was supposed to be named Circumference. I thought it was cute. Anyways, so you might have actually remembered what the formula for circumference is. So the formula for circumference, let's use my favorite color, also another great extra credit question on any quiz, is green. So the circumference is equal to 2 pi r. 2 times pi times the radius of the circle. If you remember, pi is a constant. It is equal to 3.14159. A constant just means it's a number. It's not a variable. Pi is also irrational because it is a decimal number. Let me put ... because it goes on forever without a pattern. There was also Pi Day a few days ago, March 14th. Anyways, something else you might have seen is, didn't we say that 2 times the radius is the diameter? Well, you might have also seen this formula like this, that the circumference is equal to pi times the diameter, because 2 times r, 2 times the radius is the diameter. Now that we know what circumference is, let's talk about an arc. This is probably something that you've not seen before, but an arc is a part of the circumference. So if the circumference is this entire red circle, the arc, let me highlight this for you, the arc is part of it. Think of it like a pizza. So this entire circle, circle C, right? We name circles by the center, is kind of like a pizza. The circumference is like the crust of a pizza. If you took a slice of that pizza, so this little wedge ACB, that crust would be considered an arc, okay? And the way that we name arcs is the following. It's kind of like how we name line segments. So this curve or this arc is arc AB, but to talk about an arc, we use this symbol. So this is considered arc AB. But here's the question. AB is an arc, but technically, couldn't I also say from A all the way around to this way to B? Isn't that also an arc? Not sure. So these are two brand new things. There's something called a minor arc and a major arc. So a minor arc is any arc whose length is less than 180 degrees. Now, something that you should remember, actually, we talked about this, one of the very first things we talked about in both our classes is that the angle measure of a circle is 360 degrees. So if I'm just going to cut this in half. If I cut this in half, half of the circle is 180 degrees. So this arc, this piece right here, would be considered a minor arc because it's less than half the circle. So we could label this as arc AB. However, the major arc, if I wanted to actually name this bigger piece, so this arc, some might say, oh, can't you also write AB? Not really, because it's ambiguous. Because if I just write AB with the arc symbol, it could mean either or. So there's a couple of things. Number one, if you're going to name an arc just like this, you always assume that it's the minor arc. I'll say that again. If I name an arc, AB, let's say, you're always going to assume that it is the minor arc. Now, if I wanted to name this other piece of the circle, the other bigger arc, or rather the major arc, you actually need another point. You need a third point. So let's call that point D for Mr. D'Souza. And you would have to write A to D to B. A to D to B. If you want to talk about a major arc, usually what we're going to see, usually, is going to be minor arcs. But just so that you know, if you want to name a major arc, it has to be with 3 letters. All right, last thing. We're going to do this Dora the Explorer style. Identify the following. We're going to do a check for understanding. I want you to name a radius, name a diameter, name a chord, name 1 minor arc, and 1 major arc. So try to pause the video, see if you can answer these questions yourself. All right, so let's actually do this. So a radius, remember, is from the center to any point of the circle. So C to B is 1. We also have C to A is another. Okay, let's continue. Name a diameter. A diameter is a chord that goes through the center. So a chord, remember, is a line segment that goes to 2 different parts of the circle, on the circle. And there's only one here. From A to B is the one chord that goes through the center. So A, B, another. Name a chord. There's actually 2 chords here. You could say DE is a chord. And you can also technically say that AB is a chord. Remember, diameters are special chords. Okay. A minor arc. There's a lot of minor arcs. I'm going to name just a couple. 1 minor arc, actually, I should name all of them. We'll do it in a different color. 1 minor arc is B to E. So B to E. Boop. We also have E to A. E to A. We have A to D. Remember, they're less than half the circle. So these are considered minor arcs. And then now we have D to B. So if you said any one of those, Y'all correct. All right. Last, major arcs. Don't really care that much about major arcs, so I'm only going to do one example, but you just need 3 letters that go past halfway through the circle. So for example, if you said A, D, B, that's wrong because A, D to B is half the circle. Remember, the diameter splits a circle in half. So that wouldn't necessarily mean it's a major arc. Major arc needs to go past that. So we could say from A to B to E. I'll highlight that for you. Whoops, I'll highlight that for you. So from A to B to E would be considered, so A to B to E, boop, boop, would be considered a major arc because it's an arc that's greater than half the distance around the circle. All right, so again, nothing crazy mathy now. We're just doing some vocabulary terms so that in the next video, when I talk about a minor arc, you got to know what a minor arc is. If I talk about a major arc, you got to know what a major arc is. Same thing with radius, diameter, and chord. Okay. Last but not least, I just want to say, remember homework number 1 is going to be to upload a picture of your notes. We just want to keep you accountable for you to actually be taking notes because you're going to be accountable for all the stuff that we're learning. Again, we're still learning on our end how to best teach all of you. I hope you and your families are healthy. Yeah, we'll talk soon in the next video. See you later.